Guess I gotta explain myself further, huh? I can't believe it happened, but the first Mario theatrically released film in 30 years has finally made it into the big screen. So hey, anyone who didn't grow up in the 90s can finally have the adventures of experiencing it. And that's where I come in. Wow, 4 years since my last Mario video. To any newcomers of the channel, and I'm sure there's quite a number of you, but the Mario franchise has always had a special place in my heart for a very long time since 2010, with my first game being played was New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, and that really got me into the franchise. There were other games that I grew up with as well, such as Mario Kart, Mario Party 8, and even the 80s and 90s games like Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, even if I did play both of them on the Virtual Console, but they were still good. So being a big Mario fan myself, and even more so than Sonic, I was super excited about this movie's announcement, which starts all the way back in November of 2017, where Nintendo partnered up with Illumination to make a Mario film. But the real question is, why? Why partner up with a company that has shown nothing but greed since it was first founded, and has spewed out nothing but terrible movies in the last decade? Because a lot of people would agree there hasn't been a good Illumination movie since the first Despicable Me movie in 2010. And after that year, they've managed to release atrocity after atrocity after atrocity, and I was afraid that the Mario movie would go down with them. But what had people shocked more than anything was who was going to voice the Mario characters, and I was blown away at first at what the results would be. I won't talk about Chris Pratt as Mario or Charlie Day as Luigi, because I'm sure everyone has commented on their performance, so I won't be adding anything new if I say what already has been said. The film finally hit theaters on April 5th, 2023 from the public's conception, and you bet your ass that I was going to see this movie. But I was still a bit concerned if this was going to be like anything Mario related, at least character-wise, or it'll be something different, and a small part of me thought it was gonna be shit, because despite how much of a financial failure this 1993 Mario movie was, the possibility of this Mario movie being just as bad if not worse than the first Mario movie really concerned me. But after watching it, I was actually quite surprised. Now that's not to say that I enjoyed everything about it, but as a Mario movie on its own, it actually turned out to be quite the roller coaster. How accurate, you may ask? Well, like any other movie review, let's start off with the plot. Mario and Luigi have started a plumbing business in Brooklyn, but their family disapproves of Mario's decision to leave a steady job under his antagonistic ex-employer Spike, and believes he's dragging Luigi down with him. I guess we're doing this cliche trope where a main character does something that they like and the family shits on them for it. So after seeing a significant manhole leak on the news, Mario and Luigi go underground to find it, but are sucked into the warp pipe and separated, with Mario landing in the Mushroom Kingdom and Luigi landing in the Dark Lands. So Mario tries to find a way to save his brother, and so he enlists the help of Toad and Princess Peach to do so, but the latter wants Mario's help to protect the Mushroom Kingdom from the evil Koopa King Bowser, who seeks to marry Peach and will destroy the Mushroom Kingdom using the Superstar if she refuses. I know that it isn't easy making a Mario movie out of a basic plot such as this, because you also gotta find a way to make it more than just typical standard Mario lore. After all, it's not like the Mario Brothers were in weird places like this, so you gotta figure out how they would even turn out the way they are now, and I think they did a good job at it. And besides, it would have been so easy for the two to head off to some real world or something from what would have been where they are now, because that's literally a trend with movies like Hop or any of the Smurfs or Sonic movies. So I appreciate the writers having them grow up in Brooklyn, New York, and then get transported into this fictional universe. Although if there's one issue I have with the story of this movie, it's the awful pacing. It feels like the people working on this movie had a bunch of ideas of what they wanted to include in it, but they're just rushing it way too much as an excuse to want to show you everything, instead of, you know, having a breather between each and every scene. For example, after Mario gets in the Mushroom Kingdom, he meets up with Toad, who informs him about the princess and enlists her help to save his brother. And after a training montage between the two, they go to the Kong Kingdom, and Cranky Kong has Mario go up against his son Donkey Kong, so that if he wins, then the Kong army will help him defeat Bowser. But then all the Kongs get kidnapped, and Peach goes back into the castle so that Mario and Donkey Kong can have some alone time, and then she gets captured. Now this is easier said than actually looking at the film itself, because you can make something like this work without needing it to feel rushed. Like having some time for it to get developed, you know? It's not all that confusing. In fact, it's still trying to stay in the boat of being simplistic, which I'm always down for because then there would be a lot less opportunities for plot holes. But I'm aware that the story is not something people were looking forward to in the movie. They wanted to see how it portrays the Mario characters. For a bunch of Nintendo characters that have been around for nearly 43 years, it wouldn't come off as a shock to anyone that they're all so one note. But that never really mattered because when it comes to their video game lineups, they're all a joy to play as. Sure, it's cool to have playable characters with a ton of personality, but Mario wasn't the type of franchise that felt like personality within the characters was all that necessary. However, when you're writing a movie that incorporates all of these characters, you gotta make them have, well, you know, character. and in that department I feel like this movie didn't succeed at all within it. But even when they try to give them personalities, it still falls flat on its ass to where it doesn't have a reason to exist, which makes me prefer one-note characters over failed personalities. But despite how one-note these guys are, I actually found myself enjoying quite a few, so it wasn't like their one-note selves were holding me back, because at the end of the day they're still enjoyable to watch. And I'm gonna say this right now, but I think anyone, or at least me, can agree that the best characters in the entire movie were Mario and Luigi. They may not have much going for them on their own, but their relationship with each other is amazing, and it really shows through the moments in the charming lines of dialogue, and I like their motto of nothing can hurt them as long as they're together. So to all the people who keep on proving a point that Mario doesn't care about Luigi, well, you've been proven wrong. The only issue I have is that as soon as Mario and Luigi get separated, it's immediately forgotten, for what I can assume is for Mario to create a relationship with the other characters, but I really wish they acknowledged his relationship with Luigi more, like have a couple of scenes where he talks about how much his brother means to him, which would have been perfect for a moment where he snaps and tells everyone that they'll never understand how painful it is to be separated by your loved ones. But no, they don't even bother, because despite it being called the Mario Brothers movie, it's clear that the Mario and Luigi dynamic wasn't the main focus. The reason why I take issue with this is because when it comes to Mario's perspective, Luigi is the only character that actually gives a shit about him, but with any of the other characters, I was just not having it. Let's start off with Toad. Right from the start, you can tell how annoyed Mario is with him, to the point where he doesn't want him to come on his journey to save his brother. And this type of dynamic has been done before, but with movies like Shrek and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, they at least had moments where Shrek and Donkey or Puss in Perito start to care for one another, even after an arc where the grumpy type is represented to be annoyed with the crazy type. But it works because it has, say it with me, exposition to them. But with the Mario movie, there were hardly any moments where Mario and Toad had that same feeling where they remotely bonded at all. So really this so-called relationship was just wasted potential. But you know what? I can at least look past it because at least both characters remained likable, and it's nice how Toad does somewhat care about Mario and wants to help him achieve his goal. So at least we have that. The other characters that Mario meets, I do not like at all. Donkey Kong is one of the major examples of this. On his own, I don't really mind. The writers did a good job in making him stay true to his powerhouse charisma and whatnot, but I really was not digging his relationship with Mario. Basically, it starts off with Mario beating him in an arena, and I expected DK to give Mario the respect or something for beating him fair and square, but he still hates him, which generally I don't mind at all, and I could see it work well. But DK didn't have any reason of why he hated Mario even before he was gonna kick his ass, but even that doesn't make any sense because after Mario saves him, he feels grateful, and when they're trapped, you think they're gonna warm up to each other when they start talking about daddy issues, but it ends with Donkey Kong saying that Mario Dad was right about him, which when looked at from a humor standpoint, it can be funny, even if I wasn't laughing. But it's taking place in a scene where you think it's gonna take itself seriously, but the characters don't develop at all, and even the scene I was talking about already was already forgotten because they escaped and started working together. Inconsistent is what I would call this dynamic, because what am I supposed to believe? Are they friends or are they rivals? I guess it's for the audience to decide. You guys may disagree with me in saying this, but I think Sonic Movie 2 did this way better with Sonic and Knuckles, because you wouldn't mind the scenes where Knuckles proves how strong he is compared to Sonic, and it was all worth the training he did as a kid. But what I enjoyed about their dynamic was that they didn't have to go back and forth of what their dynamic is supposed to be. Like when Knuckles saves Sonic and realizes that Sonic is not the enemy and work together, without any shitty one-liners. But with Mario and Donkey Kong, I don't ever see anything that screams consistent with their relationship. But I think the worst relationship Mario has ever had is none other than Princess Peach. Now when I first saw Peach's portrayal in one of the teasers, I was impressed that they managed to make her this badass who was going to be really useful in the movie to Mario, but I had no idea what her personality would be like. But I was so disappointed at what the end product was for her, because this didn't feel like Peach at all. I recalled watching this video by the BitBlock, in which it goes on to explain the issues surrounding the character, with the main factor coming from the fact that she's a Mary Sue. And I agree with that entirely, because I've always hated Mary Sues in general. They don't have anything going for them and are so one-note and unrelatable. And Peach in this movie was no exception. I recommend checking that video out as it goes into further detail. When it comes to Peach, the main thing I think about when it comes to her traits is having this bubbly personality and is always enthusiastic for others no matter what. And those personality types have always been my favorites, that along with the shy ones, because when you look at those types of characters, it should be enough to realize that they're not always perfect and they can make a ton of mistakes, but still come off as charming and likable. So I thought that would apply to Peach in the movie. But even then I predicted that a Mary Sue personality would happen within her character. I just wanted to know how badly they would put that into execution. And I was right. She basically starts off as Mario's mentor that would at least try to help him find his brother, but she would do that only if Mario completes this course, and then out of nowhere she does it perfectly, which if that doesn't scream Mary Sue, then I don't know what does. But I feel like most of the time, she doesn't have that much faith in Mario at all, like the part where he tries to complete the course and fails many times, and Peach gets really annoyed at this. Like fuck, she might as well say something like, "This idiot," or anything else to show her annoyance. And what really didn't get me was the scene after the montage, where Peach lies to Mario by saying it took her a million tries to try to get it right, and then flat out admitted that she got it right on her first try. Like, how do you think Mario's supposed to feel? It's not relatable to him, and it's certainly not relatable to anyone else, especially when they want to try something that they think they're not good at. It also doesn't help that even with Peach not feeling enthusiastic for Mario, at the same time you can kind of sort of see why, because the movie went out of its way to make Mario really fucking pathetic and weak. I mean, more than the usual week. I understand that they're trying to make Mario this character, in which while he seems confident in the stuff he thinks he can do, it doesn't always go his way. I mean, if I didn't like that idea, it's way better than what they pulled with Peach. But I feel like they go way beyond that by having the characters take advantage of that, even the villains. I'm not expecting Mario to pull off the Sonic-like personality where he's suddenly a douche to his friends and family, but at the same time I would have wanted him to be a badass who doesn't take anyone's shit, especially when they're pushing it towards him, because after he's proven himself to be just as useful as the others wanted him to be, I would have wanted him to come off as the superior one, and that his allies would respect him more. But that only happens after Mario and Luigi gain the power star to defeat Bowser. And that was an awesome and satisfying scene, but it's sad when you realize that this is the only time when Mario actually feels stronger than his opponent. Because even after beating Donkey Kong in a fight, DK still makes it clear to Mario that he is still inferior to him. But I'm gonna assume the writers didn't care too much about this sort of stuff, because the only explanation I have for these clusterfuck of flaws is the fact that they want to add in as many references in the movie. I can see why for the Mario Kart scene and the power-ups, at least they somewhat have a purpose to be there, but they really go beyond and really rub it in. Like, they have to make it so obvious that it is a Mario movie by having anything Mario related be in the film, which honestly detracts from how it's supposed to not only be a Mario movie, but its own movie in general. A big example is the soundtrack, which mainly consists of all the classic Mario soundtracks, mainly the ones from the NES. I get that it's coming for film adaptations of video games or TV shows to do an orchestral version of the classic themes, which is fine and all, but at the same time you would already see that coming whenever you see it through. And while it is nice that they're there, I really wish there was more opportunity for original songs, and I was hoping Jack Black wouldn't make me cringe when listening to his singing voice. And now this leads us to the voice actors. As I've said earlier, I was shocked at the cast reveal, because the majority consisted of people I've been a fan of since their previous works, but after watching the movie, I was pretty mixed. I'm gonna put it shortly for Chris Pratt as Mario since everyone has already said their thoughts, but I just think he's alright. Not the worst voice I've ever heard, but certainly not the best either. I could say the same thing for Charlie Day as Luigi. Although at first when hearing his voice clips, I thought he wasn't going to pull off the Italian accent and instead he was going to use his normal voice. But he actually was doing what Chris Pratt did and tries to sound Italian, but at the same time it doesn't. But he still got the range in his voice and I suppose that's good enough for me. I also didn't mind Toad's voice either. I was kind of afraid that he would use the squeaky Toad voice that everyone knew Toad as, but Keegan-Michael Kay did a pretty good performance, and I'm glad it sounded similar to Isaac Marshall when he was playing the character in Mario Kart 64. Although I will say the voice actor I wasn't a fan of at all was Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. No disrespect to the guy, I enjoyed his roles such as Mantis from Kung Fu Panda, and I was curious on how he would portray the Kong in the movie. But after hearing all of his lines for the first time, boy was I pissed. I recall one of my friends said that he hated the idea of Seth voicing DK. I disagreed with him at first because this took place before the movie even came out, but now I can definitely see why. Hell, a bunch of movie fans hated Rogen's performance in this, so you bet your ass that I'm on the same boat as them. But really the only issue I have with him is the fact that it's just simply Seth's voice, and it's so one note, but believe you me that it takes up the entirety of the movie. First of all, you do realize there's more to voicing a powerhouse character than having to scream so fucking much, right? It's like he's trying so hard to have a range in his voice when playing the character, but almost every line I hear from DK, it's nearly on the same octave. And I get that they're supposed to sound all gruff and shit, but you don't need to have them scream at every chance they can. It's really annoying and honestly just anger-inducing. Anna Taylor-Joy as Peach was also a choice I wasn't a fan of. She wasn't as grating as Seth Rogen, but she didn't really have any range either. And as I said earlier, I was hoping that she would sound all enthusiastic, you know, to give us more of a clue of what Peach is supposed to be, but sadly it just portrays of what you would expect a voice to portray, and in many areas it feels like I'm hearing a different character that isn't Peach. But now we get to the voices I really really like, and by that I mean just one. And that honor goes to Jack Black as Bowser. He was great, basically sounding how I want him to sound like. The personality is alright, but I can tell that the writers were doing the best they can to write Bowser as a villain, and they did an okay job at it. Really the only issue I had with him is the Peaches song, but other than that, Jack's performance was stellar. I guess the last thing we should talk about is the animation. When looking at it from the teasers, I was really impressed that it wasn't going to look like the same boring Illumination style that we've seen in over a decade. And while they all look passable, they don't seem to differentiate from one another. But in the Mario movie, everything looks so expressive, especially with the characters and the fight scenes, and I can tell it's what most of the budget for the film went towards, along with the stunning visuals. If there's one thing that I can commend Illumination for, it's the fact that the visuals are great. Everything looks so colorful and saturated. Even if I would enjoy the animation of most of these movies, I can appreciate them for looking amazing, and I can assume that it's what most of their movie budget went to, which wouldn't surprise me if that were the case. Overall, the Mario movie wasn't really something that lived up to my expectations, but at the same time I do think that it was just a fun little Mario movie at best, and just a generic Illumination movie at worst. I mean, despite me liking Mario more than Sonic, I still would rather sit through Sonic movie 2 than this, because at least that movie made more sense at what it was trying to be, and had better character dynamics. Even if it wasn't good as Sonic movie 2, it was still a lot better than this movie. But if you're a Mario fan, I still recommend you check this movie out. You'll most likely see something that I don't, or maybe you'll most likely agree with what I've said. But similarly with Sonic the Hedgehog movie 2, there have been so many people who were pissed off at the Rotten Tomato movie reviews for the film, with it currently standing on the 50s. Now, I'm not one to judge people's opinions or anything. In fact, when it comes to them saying stuff like it has way too many references or that the characters and the so-called dynamics that they have are non-existent, I can definitely understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, there have been a ton of dumb defenses for it, with the biggest example coming from the fact that people are just fed up with movies needing to be good, completely unaware of it meaning that they just called the movie bad. But yeah, the Mario movie wasn't all that amazing, but I would say it's far from bad, and I do appreciate it for making nearly $1 billion at the box office, which isn't a surprise to me at the same time, seeing as how this is the famous Italian we're talking about, but it's still not something to really scoff at, and even for an Illumination movie, it's damn impressive. As I'm writing the script, it has been over a week since I finished my first year of college, and I gotta say that the workload even during the last 2 months of it was really tiring and difficult, but I'm glad to be done with it and I'm really looking forward to making more videos in the future. But I've also been experimenting with Blender over the past week. It's a really good software that lets you mess around with models of your favorite characters and create your own renditions. I've already made like 3 so far, but I'm looking forward to making more in the future, although I'll still be doing digital drawing, so if anyone's thinking I'm done doing that, well, don't worry, there's still more to come. Anyway, that's it for the vid. Take it easy, folks.